Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome once again to the weekly live webinar presented by Affinity Federal Credit Union. Today's topic is ID theft prevention. Great topic for us to learn from, so we can learn what's new out there in regards of ID theft, and we can learn ways to prevent us becoming the next victim of this crime, identity theft. My name is Oscar Cordova, and I'm the manager of financial education and external affairs here at Affinity. I am in charge of the financial education efforts for all of the areas that we serve. Today's presenter, her name is Veronica Hernandez. Veronica works for our risk department and fraud department, so she brings a wealth of knowledge to this webinar. I encourage everybody to ask questions. If you guys have a question during the presentation, feel free to ask the question during the presentation, that way you don't forget it, and Veronica will be more than happy to address it at the end of the webinar. In order for you to ask a question, you guys can use the Q&A option on your panel, and we'll receive it and make sure we address it at the end of the webinar. Also, a quick disclaimer. The information provided to all of you this afternoon is intended to be for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be legal, tax, or financial advice. If you guys have a situation where you guys want to talk on a one-on-one basis with a professional that can assist you in any legal, tax, or financial advice, feel free to reach out, and I'll be more than happy to put you in touch with the person that can help you with that. With that said, I will turn it over to Veronica. Veronica, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon to present this great topic.
Thank you, Oscar, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. As he mentioned, my name is Veronica Hernandez. I work in risk operations, specifically in fraud. So identity theft is something that we see very frequently, and I'm happy to talk and hopefully educate everyone a little bit more on it and add additional information to your shelf of protection for your information. So with that said, let's get started. As a young child, my mother told me I could be anyone I wanted. Well, turns out the police call this identity theft. And although we can laugh about that quote, it is something that unfortunately is happening. The victims of identity theft are growing each and every year. It is unfortunately very profitable for criminals. And that's why it's so important to know how it happens, how to see those red flags, and how to protect yourself from it. So, we hear about identity theft in the news. Maybe you've received a letter from a merchant advising you that they've had a data breach and some of your information may have been exposed. We hear about it in commercials where ID theft monitoring services are offered, and they're, trying to sell a particular product to you. But what's the exact definition of identity theft? Well, it's this exactly: any misuse of your personal information by another individual for the purpose of obtaining cash or credit and/or goods and services. Now, how are they able to perform this type of fraud? Well, if a criminal has your name and social security number, as well as other information, or personal information rather, like your address, account information, where you house your accounts, where you invest, do you own any loans or credit cards that you have, anything along those lines, they can try and use to establish accounts or to obtain credit using your information. And we all know how long it takes to be able to really have a good credit, and just how far reaching that information is for your day-to-day life. So it's extremely stressful, and it's a time-consuming process. We understand that it truly feels like a violation of your information when someone else other than yourself somehow accesses it and uses it to establish accounts or credit in your name. You don't get any sort of benefit from it. And unfortunately, it does fall upon the victim to prove that it isn't you that has actually applied or requested those products or services, and try and clear your name. And it's something that can take a long time to try and resolve. So ID theft is unfortunately very profitable, and it's also a lengthy process to try and straighten out. Now, some of the things that we may not realize is a type of ID theft that we may be more used to. More often than not, we might have seen a fraudulent transaction using our debit card or a credit card, and it's a pretty fast resolution. Unfortunately, if a criminal does somehow get access to your full card number, the expiration date, and the security code to perform fraudulent transactions, you can always reach out to your financial institution and advise that the transactions aren't ones that you've performed or authorized. And it's as easy as placing a stop on the card to try and get that resolved. But the other form of ID theft is if someone were to have your name and your account information. In those instances, a criminal may be able to process an electronic transaction using that information. And once you see it on the account, you can also go through the process of disputing it. But of course, what concerns you is, what if another transaction presents itself? And, what if I don't catch it in time or anything along those lines? Uh, Having to try and correct or protect yourself from additional unauthorized activity may require you to set up a new account number, which we know can be quite a stressful or difficult process since we have so much linked up to our accounts nowadays, as far as payments and also to get paid. But these are just more common, but not often related or associated with ID theft. But they are, in fact, the same thing. Someone's profiting using your information, uh, posing as someone that's authorized to perform those transactions using your information. So, how do the thieves obtain your information? How does this happen? Well, there's a few ways, and we'll break down each one for you in the following slides, but they are dumpster diving, skimming, phishing, spyware, and hacking, unsecured mailboxes, and also other merchants or companies that may not be securing your personal information as well as you would want. Let's start with dumpster diving. So we might receive a statement or a document, maybe end of the year document. We just are going through tax season, maybe tax documents that you will be using to file taxes. Once you're done using them, you might just tear it up and throw it in the garbage. But remember that if they're not properly or thoroughly destroyed, we're not necessarily monitoring the garbage bin when we put it on the curb of our street for pickup. It's possible that someone may just be casually going through and going through the trash to get those documents with all that sensitive information. And so we always recommend you should definitely have a crosscut shredder if possible. I know that I certainly last holiday season was able to get one on sale at my local store at very, very low cost, but it's so useful because anything that comes in, whether it's an offer for credit or to open an account, or sensitive information like tax documents or statements, anything along those lines, I can go ahead and just shred them right away. That way, if anyone were to try and access that information, they wouldn't be able to gather my name, my address, account information, birth date, social security, and so on and so forth. Remember, the other option that you have is that you can always enroll for e-statements. This way, those statements are sent to you electronically, so you don't have any sort of paper trail that could possibly be compromised or lost in the mail on its way to you, anything along those lines. In e-statements, the nice thing is that you can always save them on a secure drive, so that way you will consistently be able to keep those same thorough records of your information without having to worry about them being exposed, or if you're feeling weary about maintaining them on your computer, being able to save them on a drive is an alternative way to be able to keep that documentation, but also not risk any sort of additional exposure. Shoulder surfing. We may often forget about this, but keep in mind that when you are performing transactions via ATM or maybe through point of sales that are not monitored, think of a gas station. If you pay right at the pump and maybe someone's not watching it very often, or even an ATM in the back corner of the store, it's important to be aware of your surroundings. Make sure that no one's leaning or monitoring you as you're punching in your PIN. Make sure that, there's nothing on the devices themselves, like skimmers, which I'll talk about in a moment, that may be collecting your card information. In addition to that, remember that if you are accessing your bank accounts or any other sensitive accounts online through a public computer, like at a library or a cyber cafe, remember not to save any of your information to that. Make sure to monitor who's around you so that no one's watching you entering your password. And certainly if you do use it, make sure that that information is cleared so that the next person to use the device won't have that information saved or available to them to try and access. Skimmers, as I mentioned earlier, it's unfortunately something that we do see very frequently. So whenever you use an ATM or you're using your card at gas pumps or, like I said, other point of sale locations where they may not be regularly monitored, make sure that the device looks normal. What I mean by that is that there's nothing sticking out or loose on the slip where you enter your card. If it's loose, it's possible that someone may have tried to stick a skimming device to be able to collect the card information. If you do notice one of those on the devices, make sure that you report it to the store or the institution if you're using one at a local financial institution. But it's super important to make sure that there's nothing unusual on those devices. We've even seen instances where it's almost like a residue that when you insert your card and you get it back, there's almost like a sticky substance on the card. So keep that in mind. There might not be anything happening, but it's always good to be aware of these types of things. Maybe you want to use another device or another pump or another ATM to be able to complete your transaction. And also make sure to monitor your accounts. If you see something unusual, you as the account holder are the best person to tell us or report unauthorized activity. Unfortunately, sometimes when we go to restaurants, if you are paying with your card, the card is taken for the transaction to be completed. But if possible, keep an eye out on where the transactions are being performed. Unfortunately, we have seen instances where multiple transactions are performed when only one is authorized and for significant dollar amounts. That's when something like card transaction monitoring or alerts really comes into play because you right on the spot will be advised when your card is run. And like I said, you as the account holder can best tell us what is authorized and what is not. Phishing. This is something that we are seeing frequently. I've seen quite a number of news broadcasts cover this recently, especially. Remember that if you receive a communication, whether it be via email or text message, that is asking for personal information, don't respond, especially if you don't feel comfortable, even if it's something that drives you to want to act quickly. For instance, maybe you're being charged and you have to click to request a stop on the transaction or to cancel it. Make sure to really review where that message is coming from. The reason why is many times we see criminals send out text messages purporting to be institutions, maybe your card fraud monitoring, with links, or even just asking right through the message for sensitive information, like card information, account information, online banking information. You want to make sure that you're thoroughly reviewing those messages, and if there is any uncertainty, you should be following up with your financial institution to confirm if it's a valid transaction or not. Remember that before even responding, you should always also log in yourself. Is there anything that you're seeing, any unusual activity that you can see that would result in that text message coming through to you? And remember that very often, if someone reaches out to you via text message, you have no way of confirming if that was truly sent from the authentic location. You should really stop and think, why would they be reaching out to you to ask for personal information when it's something that they may already have? It should not require you to enter that in addition to responding to messages. We're seeing this via email as well. Very often we're seeing emails that request urgent action. That is, hey, we're going to charge your account. Hey, you're enrolled for a new year of this subscription of this service. But remember, notice where those emails are coming from. An example, if an email is coming from Amazon, about an annual subscription, make sure that you're looking where the email was actually sent from. If it's at customer service, Amazon, at gmail.com, it's not going to be a legitimate message. Remember, Amazon is a thoroughly large organization, and they can probably send emails directly from their own Amazon.com email addresses. And remember, always reach out. Don't click or provide any information. And if they give you a phone number to call on the text message or email, do your own due diligence, go onto the site, review the contact information, and only reach out to those phone numbers that you can verify are legitimately connected with that institution. Otherwise, even if you dial it, if it's not the right number, you may end up speaking to someone else that you think is tied to the organization or merchant, but is really not. Same thing with the text messages. You want to make sure to review if they're calling from your financial institution or messaging you from your financial institution. Go onto the site or look on the back of your plastic cards. Usually that will have the correct contact information that you should be getting contacted by. Spyware. It kind of ties together to those text messages and those emails. You want to make sure that you have a service that is able to consistently run checks on your device to make sure that there's no Trojan programs in order to prevent hackers from stealing sensitive information on your computer. Think of what you maintain on your computer. You may save your credentials, maybe you have saved sensitive documentation on your computer, and if malware of any sort is able to go onto your computer, it's possible that they could be looking at those documents without even realizing it. And that's the difficult part. It's hard to really be able to figure out when there is any sort of virus or malware on your computer. And that's why it's good to just consistently run those checks on your computer to prevent that sort of thing from happening. Also, remember that if you have someone reach out to you about a compromise on your computer, you shouldn't be asked to download any third-party devices or software. Usually you want to just go ahead and stop or not give a third party access to your computer unless you're absolutely certain of who you're working with. Remember asking questions, stopping, pausing before performing any sort of action may be what prevents you from becoming a victim of ID theft through spyware. Finally, the big concern about having a virus or malware on your device is that if you don't know that it's on the computer, they may continually be able to track emails that you get, see the websites that you frequent, and even see what you're entering as your new username and password to access sensitive accounts or information. So again, very, very important to have some sort of software or security on your device and have it run regularly. Mail theft. Well, unfortunately, just like with dumpster diving, we do have mail theft. If you do leave mail in your mailbox to be picked up by the postal worker, the difficulty is that they're not, going up and down your street throughout the day. So even though you leave it there for them to come and pick up the mail, it's not always being monitored or watched. It could very well be someone that's just walking down the street, sees that your mail is sticking out from your mailbox, or maybe you have the red flag lifted to notify postal workers that you have mail to get picked up. It's almost like a red flag for their attention, unfortunately. So how can you prevent this sort of threat or to become a victim of ID theft? Well, if you can, certainly hand it directly to postal carriers or drop it off at your nearest post office. Locked mailboxes also are another way of trying to protect your information. That way the postal carriers are the only ones that can access it. There is some good news though. There are federal regulations that are put in place so that you as a consumer can protect your information and also defend yourself from additional ID theft. So what can you do? It's good to understand that you have certain rights as a consumer to check your information and also be able to dispute them. So what are the key things to remember or how to dispute or protect yourself as a consumer? Well, first is remember that you can request a credit report on a regular basis. Every year, you are able to request a free credit report from all the major credit bureaus. We absolutely encourage you to review that information to make sure that you recognize all the accounts, that you recognize any sort of credit or any applications that may have been submitted with your information. Consider adding a credit freeze to your credit reports. If you have not been a victim of identity theft and you are only proactively trying to monitor your information, you can place it for a period of 1 year at no additional cost and no additional issues. But if you do become a victim of identity theft, you are able to place it for an extended period of time without any issues. It usually just requires additional documentation, such as a police report, in the event that you are a victim. Also, sign up for free credit monitoring. There's a lot of programs that are available online, as well as programs or services which you can sign up, but that do have costs involved with them. I certainly encourage everyone to do their due diligence and review what would be the best product or service for you. But the beginning is to make sure that you can monitor and very quickly report any unauthorized requests or inquiries that are being done with your information. And in the event that you do become a victim of identity theft, here at the credit union, we do offer our members a service through CyberScout. And what do they do? Well, there's one of two things that are really great. One, CyberScout is able to assist you in going through the steps of placing flags or monitoring on your information. That way you can start seeing if any unusual activity happens with your information. The second great thing that I like about it is that you are put in contact with a specific representative. They will then become your point of contact, because identity theft is a very stressful process, and having to explain or reiterate the story or what may have happened over and over again certainly only adds to the stress. So having that one point of contact that you work with and already knows what's the situation and what needs to be done really helps alleviate a little bit of that stress. So if you have an instance where you are a victim of identity theft, certainly let us know and we can put you in contact with them to get that process started. We also recommend filing an identity theft report with the FTC. The reason why is they actually offer great recovery programs, just like CyberScout. Next steps, what to be on the lookout, suggested additional reporting or monitoring. That way you don't have to just ask, well, what do I do? They certainly give you a step-by-step process and plan so that it gives you some guidance on how to better secure your information. Thank you again, everyone, for your time. And if we have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Veronica, for presenting this great topic. Yes, at this point, we would like to open up the floor for any questions that any one of you may have. Just a quick reminder, this presentation is being recorded and the recording will be sent to you guys shortly right after the webinar. Thanking you for attending, and the email will have a link to be able to access the recording, as well as a link to register for next week's weekly webinar, which will be on budgeting basics. So we'll be going over the basic strategies to create a budget and why a budget is important. So in the meantime, let me just take a look if there's any questions right now being asked. All right, very good. I don't see any questions at the moment. I'll give it another 10 seconds or so. Oh, there's a question that just came through. Can we get the slides? I can definitely do that. And thank you so much for asking. I can definitely, in the follow-up email, I'll include the PDF with the slides, the way you guys can have that as well. Thank you so much for asking that. Let me see if there's any other questions. I don't see any other questions at the moment. So at this point, I would like to bring this webinar to a close. Oh, hold on a second. No, I just want to say thank you. So there was another comment that just came through. Thank you so much. I really hope this was informative to all of you. The whole purpose of these weekly webinars is to provide our membership with the latest on financial topics and give guidance on how to become better with your financial well-being, right? So I really like that you guys liked it. Veronica, do you have any parting words?
Thank you, everyone, for your time. And remember, if you see something unusual, certainly say something. We'll be more than happy to assist or figure out if it's a legitimate request. And otherwise, I hope everyone has a lovely Thursday.
Fantastic. And thank you. Okay, there is one question that just came through. When this happened, who do you call first? When identity theft happens, who do you call first, Veronica?
Well, it depends on where the identity theft happened, right? So if it's something that you notice through your Social Security, maybe it's through the credit bureau reports, we definitely recommend going ahead and filing a police report. Then, in addition to that, filing the FTC identity theft report and reaching out to that institution to let them know. The reason why it might be in that order is usually financial institutions, if it's there where it happens, will require that sort of documentation to support and help you in the process of removing unauthorized activity. If it's anywhere else, certainly reaching out to that organization or merchant, wherever you see the unusual activity, you'll want to reach out to them as well. But again, documenting is great and also will be something that you will need in order to dispute the activity. So that's usually why we recommend filing the report and police report as being some of the primary steps.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Great advice. There's a couple of questions that just came through. And thank you so much for asking these questions. Next question that was asked, how does Cyber Scout compare to others? Do you have any relationship with them?
Yes, Cyber Scout specifically is the organization that the credit union partners with in events of identity theft. I think they're great. Again, I love the fact that you have a point of contact to talk to. Think of a stressful situation. You don't want to have to repeat the scenario over and over again. That is their bread and butter, their experience. So, and remember that as a credit union, we certainly do thorough checks and they have to live up to our reputation and the service that we want to offer our members. So rest assured that if it's a product or service or merchant that we offer, it's someone that has to go through and meet the same guidelines or levels of service that we offer to our members. As far as other programs, I know that there's plenty of them out there. I don't want to encourage one over the other, but it's so good to do your due diligence, review, look at the reviews that other individuals have had. And also, if you go onto FTC, onto their website, they actually have a lot of information on different services or products that you can use to try and have that monitoring in place.
Excellent. A couple more. Is there a list of places we can go to if we are victims of ID theft?
Yeah, absolutely. If you go on to the Federal Trade Commission, they actually have a whole step-by-step on who, what, when, where, how to go about the recovery process, essentially correcting and recovering your information or your credit scores, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, and the last question, Cyber Scout, how do we find out more about them?
Sure. Well, you can do a regular search, and I believe, Oscar, you might be able to help me out, but I believe there's a page actually on our website that's available for reading up on the type of coverages, services, and length of time that they offer for our members.
Yes, I believe there is a place on our website. What I'll do in the follow-up email is I'll include the URL. That way you guys can access the information directly in our website, okay? That way you guys don't have to go around looking for it. Very good. So this brings us to the end of the questions. So at this point, again, I would like to thank everybody for attending. I will be bringing this webinar to a close. Hope to see you guys next week. And thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Have a wonderful afternoon, and please be on the lookout for the follow-up email that I'll be sending shortly. Okay. Thank you, everyone. You have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.